It is my privilege and joy that we can continue our Bible study about Genesis, and we have today the subtitle, All Nations and Babel. In the antediluvian world, there were no natural disasters. There were no famines. There were no diseases. There is no mention of anything that made people sick. There was enmity, probably, about other things, but not about masks and syringes. We don't even have related that it was war among them. It just said that the world was a disaster, but we don't know exactly how that looked. There was one messenger, and that was Noah, who presented the coming of the crisis, who presented the coming not of the crisis, but of the judgment that would be final for all of them, that they will die if they won't enter the ark. And the amazing thing is that did they not enter because they had too less evidence that there would come a flood? What withheld them to storm that ark when it was ready? Why did they not enter in? Well, the Lord said they ignored the warning message because they had become unreachable for the Spirit of God. And when God has no access to the heart of man, no matter what he does, it's impossible that person should be reached. That wasn't the case of Judas. Jesus did everything to reach his heart. But Judas took the decision to betray Jesus when Jesus washed him his feet. When that what should melt his heart and bring him to say, Lord, you're God, to confess his problem and his error. Exactly that could not reach him anymore. That was the point when his hardened heart decided to betray the Lord completely. How is it today? Why does the majority today ignore the signs of the times? Now we know that all generations will come to the judgment at the same time. And Jesus says, sometimes he says, the people of Sodom will come to judgment with this nation and this city here, and they will condemn them because they had greater privilege than they had. And so will the antediluvian people come to us and say, why did you not listen to the signs of times? Will they come to God and say, look, you gave us not so much evidences of your coming judgment? Will they have an excuse? No, because God would exactly prove with the following generations that no matter how many signs he would bring, it still would not change the heart. That's a sad thing, isn't it? That's why God will show on us. God will show on his people, to the people of Sodom and to the antediluvian world. He will show to them, look, I gave you this enough evidences. You had Lot, you have had Abraham, you might have had even Melchizedek. You had evidences of what is right and wrong. But you didn't listen. And if I would have brought you the whole, what can I say, plenties of signs that we have all today that show that judgment is there, it still would have not saved you. Because look, I prove it to you. When once the heart is closed, then no matter what happens, nothing can close or can open that heart again. This is the great warning why we study this lecture in Genesis. Jesus says, but as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also be the coming of the Son of Man. Friends, this is the same thing, the same ignorance that existed back then, existed even at the first coming of Jesus, when the Magi came and this astrologists, and they came and said, where is the star? Where is the newborn king of Judah? And they said, well, let's look to the scriptures. And then they looked to the scriptures, and lo, they found in Bethlehem. Oh, Bethlehem. Why didn't they not go there? They did not go because they didn't believe it. So there are people today who know all the prophecies, who know where what happened. It will not help them at all because they don't believe it. They see it, they can tell another one, but they themselves don't believe it because their heart is closed. What a tragedy. There is another element that is very important for us in our days that happened back then. It was the building of the Tower of Babel. When people multiplied after the flood, and they said, go to let us build as a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. That's an amazing thing. These people went through the flood, and they went through baptism. They saw the judgment of God, but it did not really change their heart. Maybe in the first generation, but we see also in the first generation that there were differences in the boys of Noah. They still had their sinful nature. And of course, they had to pass it on to the coming generations. And in these generations, we see that they had the same mind. They wanted to make a name, but to whom make a name? You know, name is identity. And they wanted to be God. They spoke out of their heart, we make a tower until heaven so that we reach unto God, and God cannot destroy us again with a flood. And they used a common element that says, so that we should not be scattered abroad upon the face of the earth. So God made that family should stick together and to be not so far away. And so why should we spread? Don't go so far. Just stay here, grandmother, grandfather. Yeah, we don't want to be scattered all abroad. And we want to make us a name. And this tower stands for the opposition of God. That's why you want to make a name against God. You want to show who you are. It's not the humility of a child of God, but the pride that comes out of the deception of the heart that we were born in. But before we go into the story, let's see how the generations came, or how the things came to happen. So Noah had 3 sons. He had Japheth, and he had children like Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. And Ham had Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. And Sem had Elam, Ashur, Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. So these are the sons, and then they go on into different generations. And for us, just because we have it mentioned in the Bible, we want to see the idea that why Canaan was cursed by Noah to be the servant of his uncles. So we know the story that Canaan got drunk and he lay down in his bed without being covered. And Ham came by, saw him, told it to his brothers, but he didn't do anything to cover him up. He went up and proclaimed it. We don't know exactly the story because it isn't written here, the details. But the interesting thing is that in verse 24 from chapter 9 in Genesis, it says, "And Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant." Now I just want short to mention this because I have patients that come unto me and they believe that they are under a certain curse because of their forefathers. What has it to do with curses or blessings? We know that God speaks a blessing of the good. He says the blessing is a confirmation of a right action, and a curse is a confirmation of a wrong action, a consequence for it. So God cursed the serpent, God cursed the earth because of Adam, but we know also these curses were for the benefit, for the salvation of men, because God never does anything that is not for the good of the human beings. Now, can we be the victim of a curse that was done in the 4 generations, and now we just are the one that has to support that? Is that the right way things work? When we read here, we don't know why Canaan was mentioned and not Ham. Canaan was the youngest son of Ham. Could it be that Canaan was involved in the whole story? It is not written. But he curses Canaan. Why? We don't know. But we know that when Abraham blessed his son, and when he blessed the sons of Joseph, he put his hand across. Not that way on the head of his 2 sons, but did like this. And Joseph wanted to correct it, but the father said, "No, I know." Now, fathers, or like Noah or Abraham, they were prophets. They had from God certain information about what has to come. And so they proclaimed that. So they could give a promise. They could show ahead what in general would happen to the one and to the other. But that doesn't mean that the individuals of the same nation that got a blessing or got a curse has to follow that. So when it's a blessing, no one cares, but even the blessing, as the curse, is bound on conditions. That's why a curse cannot anyone pronounce. It must be an authority, a divine authority, if it should function. And it might go in a certain way and affect the whole family, but that does not mean it takes away when grace knocks at the door and you can become a child of God. You have to remain in that state. So we cannot do anything about our circumstances. Because, yes, there are circumstances, if parents are very diligent, they might have a good state when they get children. And those children grow up in a more, we would say, favored environment. And then there are other children that might have parents that were drunkard or abusive, and they had other circumstances. But who knows what is the best for each one, for one purpose, to be saved? So God will show at the end that those who were less favorable were more susceptible for His grace and the knocking at the door than might be the other ones, because they have everything they need. Why should they take God? So all the circumstances that God brings in the life of a person are for a good, for that good. So we should never accept the idea that we are cursed because our forefathers did I don't know what kind of procedures, and that's why we are like we are. No. In the moment grace knocks at our door, we can be free. So yes, we might be in a family where certain things are not right, but grace and our individual belief in the offer of Christ makes us free. So do not allow ever the thought that you're a victim of others, because that thought is always wrong. Now, we also see that from Ham came Nimrod, from his first son Cush. Now, Nimrod was the first ruler of the world. He was the first one that united them under this ideology. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Erech and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar. And out of that land went forth Ashur and builded Nineveh and the city Rehoboth and Calah and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. The same is a great city. Now, he was a very eager person, Nimrod, and he was big. And he called all the people to build this tower under the circumstances I already explained, with a good motivation for the common good, but against God. How does God respond? And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth. Now, did anything change during this 3,000 years and something since then? Or are we in the same situation? The Bible tells in Revelation 17:3, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So all abominations of the earth come from a spiritual mind. It's a spiritual power, Babel or Babylon. And it rules the political power, the state power. That's why it sits on the political power, which the beasts represent. The beasts represent a political power. So, as it was made by God that a spirit should conduct the physical, so every state power must be governed, everything must be governed by a belief, by a spiritual idea, by a spiritual ideology. So ideology comes always before action. What one's believe, he must do. That's how the order is, and the order of function, and nothing can change that order. So here we need to be very clear that Babel is a spiritual power that dominates the state power. We have seen this in this crisis, that it's the ideology of medicine, could say the sophistries or the magical knowledge of medicine that dominated the state powers, because they all get aligned in the same role under one ideology. And not only the states, all the churches and so on, but especially the family ties were broken. They were not so strong as the beliefs of someone. So what a person believes, that determines his action. The actions are just a result of what he believes. That's why on the actions, we can know what a person believes or not. So, here we have this woman that from the beginning was sitting on the state power. In the history of the world, religions, doctrines, ideologies have determined the state power. A woman is the symbol of it. In Zechariah 5, we find this. Then the angel that talked with me went forth and said unto me, Lift up now thine eyes, and see what is this that goeth forth. And I said, What is it? And he said, This is an ephah that goeth forth. He said, Moreover, this is their resemblance through all the earth. And behold, there was lifted up a talent of lead, and this is a woman that sitteth in the midst of the ephah. And he said, This is wickedness. This is the opposite of God. This is the opposite of the law of God. That is wickedness. And he cast it into the midst of the ephah, and he cast the weight of lead upon the mouth thereof. Then lifted I up mine eyes and looked, and behold, there came out two women, and the wind was their wings, for they had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the ephah between the earth and the heaven. Then I said to the angel that talked with me, Whither do these bear the ephah? And he said unto me, To build it an house in the land of Shinar, and it shall be established and set there upon her own base. So the land of Shinar is Babylon. It was there where the city of Babel was built. It was there where the Tower of Babel was built. And it is still the place where the wickedness has its residence. So the two women are symbols. The clean woman in the Bible is the truth that represents God's teaching. And the whore stands for the lie which comes from Satan, and it is represented by Babylon. So there are only these two powers, these two countries, so to say, these two principles that a human can follow, either the one or the other. And according to the Bible, all forms of government are controlled by the whore, Babylon. She sits upon the animal. It sits upon the beast. And that beast is the government's power. Now, the teaching has also a physical location. So every country must have a place where it is represented. And the truth and the church in our time is represented by the heavenly Jerusalem. She is our mother, the Bible says. And Rome is the mother of harlots for all this world, of all abominations. So there are only two sources where things come out: the truth or the lie. And for our time, it is the heavenly Jerusalem. That's our mother. That's our citizenship. That's our capital where we are bound to. And Rome represents the physical place of, we could say, the government of the devil, the government of Babylon. It's the place of the anti-Christs, of everything that is against God. So it's a city, but the city just represents the teaching. But it has a location. That's why the woman represented the wickedness was brought into a land that was Shinar, and in the land of Babel. And today that is Rome. And it will be this until Jesus comes. Now in Revelation 14:8 it says, "And there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication." Now you see here, it could even be said that woman, because she made it all nation drinks. But now it is compared with a city. Well, the great city has not fallen yet. The physical things have not changed. But what really came out in these last 2 years is that the Babylonian wine is seen in its clearness by many people. In this great deceptive work that we have seen about where disease is coming from, we could proclaim that Babylon is fallen, because it is obvious now where it's going to, its force, it's compelling. It is all, of course, with a good motivation, or not motivation, with a good reason, that is, we must be healthy. But it is put on a physical element, our destiny, if we are healthy or not. And this cannot be. That's why we could see the fall of Babylon. We could see this false doctrine of medicine combined with the religious powers, that they are powers of force, not of love. That they do not come from God. And now there is a call. Revelation 18:4, "And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues." So what is it? What does it mean to go out of Babylon? Is it to leave the system or a change of heart? So what is it? Because I have been grown up that I know that I'm in the right church. And you ask another person from another church, he says, well, I'm in the truth as well. And everyone is in the truth. Because in our mind, we were made that we could stay only in the truth. But now how do I know that I'm in the truth? Will the church tell me what the truth is? Now, remember, ideologies must have a seat. That seat is also a physical place where the ideologies come together, or the same people with the same ideology, they come up together. And then they do what they think to worship, or because they have the same mindset. That's why they have built so many denominations. And everyone says, I'm in the truth. I'm in the truth. But how do you know? In my days, when I was young, it was a great thing when one changed the system. That is, he came from Orthodoxy into the Adventist church. And you said, wow, this is a great gain. He really come from destruction to salvation. Really? Is that what counts? To leave a certain system? If that would be, then the place must then make us what we are, and not we, the place. But this last crisis, in these last 2 years, has really shown that it doesn't matter in which stall you are, I mean in which church you are, in which denomination you call yourself to be, in which physical place you come together. It has just showed that if you believe that your health is dependent on a invisible, little, terrible enemy, then you must worship that enemy. And especially that enemy is everlasting. We cannot destroy it. And it can change all the time. And you must just obey it, fear it. Now you see, how many churches, I don't know of any denominations as a whole, stood up and said, all this is a lie. Because my Bible says that disease comes from someone else. It's none. I don't know of them. Maybe it is. But I would have heard it because the news have just went all against those who have dared to say something critical about what happened. So, in this situation, was shown that it does not matter in which denominations you are. You all worship the image. You all worship the wrong God because you believe it. So, it doesn't matter in the end in which denomination you are. All have proven that they have not the truth. Because if one would have had the truth as a whole, remember, there are a few in every denomination that know the truth and follow it. But they're just a few. And of course, they come as well together, like the others are all coming together. So, do we want to change systems? Do we want to fight systems? That's very easy. That was done all my lifetime as I'm growing up in my church. And no one fights what really matters. That is the heart. Because what keeps us in Babylon is our heart. So the only way to come out of Babylon is to crucify the inner lie that is in us. Because that binds us to believe a system that is wrong. To believe a system that has to have compelling powers over others, has to rule and make people to do certain measures just to please the ideology. So, if this change in the heart does not take place, we cannot unbind ourselves from Babylon. Even we might go and sit in the church of God, among the people of God, we would still be Babylonians. Because there are only two citizenships. It's to be a Babylonian or a heavenly kingdom citizen that has Jerusalem, the heavenly Jerusalem, as its capital, as its mother. So on which side you are? So people are getting confused today because when they hear go out of Babylon and say, okay, come out from your church and come into my church. That is nothing. That doesn't change anything. What really matters, what really would unbind me from the Babylonian system, even though I might be in it, but I'm not from it, like Jesus says, you're in the world, but not from the world, is when the selfish nature is destroyed. Then there is no tendency anymore to rule over others, no tendency to tell others what they have to do or not, no fear of others. Those things are gone when the heart is clean. So when the angel calls us out of Babylon, it doesn't call us out of a system, not even of a system of beliefs. It is calling us out by destroying that what makes us Babylonians, and that is our error, our wickedness, that is this terrible thing in us that we want to get rid of. That's the cry. And all people who will take that message and will make a change, an exchange of lives, giving the old life up because it's a dead life and taking the new life of Christ, they will be a group. And they will be seen as different, because all this in the other system will take the mark of the beast on their hand or at their forehead. And so the difference will be clearly seen. So, if that is so, then let's get out of Babel. Let's search our hearts and becoming free from the deception that binds us to certain rights that might not be correct. This is the time of judgment. This is the time where everyone needs to know where he stands. And it is not just a confession that will save us, because the test shows if we fear God or a virus. If we fear for ourselves to get sick, or if we fear for God's sake to keep us healthy. If we know what is in our hands and what is not in our hands. So let us search that, because it's time. Now, as an introduction for our next presentations, we have the descendants of Sem. Not all of them, but just Arpachshad. Arpachshad was 35 years old when he got his son Selah. And after that, he lived 403 years and begot sons and daughters. Selah was 30 years old when he got Eber. And after that, he lived thereafter also 403 years and begat sons and daughters. Eber was 34 years old when he got Peleg, and lived thereafter 430 years and begat sons and daughters. Peleg was 30 years old when he got Reu, and lived after that 209 years and begat sons and daughters. Reu was 32 years old when he got Serug. He lived after that 207 years and begat sons and daughters. Serug was 30 years old when he got Nahor, and lived after that 200 years and begat sons and daughters. Nahor was 29 years old when he got Terah, and lived thereafter 119 years and begat sons and daughters. Terah was 70 years old when he got Abram, Nahor, and Haran, and he lived and died when he was 205 years old and died in Haran. Now, it's amazing to see how the ages have reduced from a few generations to coming down to that what God said in the beginning, where he said, I will reduce man's life to 120 years. So the age of the people before the flood and after the flood. The one lived almost 1,000 years. Methuselah lived the longest, 969 years old when he died. And Noah, who was from this old generation, lived 950 years. His sons, around 500 years they lived, and then the following generation it fell down until we see that we come to Abraham, where it is around 120 years. Some people got a little bit more, some less, but nowadays we are coming down to even lower than that. Moses writes it's 80 and it's 70, and when it's highs, is it 80 years. So, what tells us medicine today? Medicine tells us exactly the opposite story. It says, well, people before, because of poor whatever, hygienic measures, they died earlier. Now, what kind of hygienic measures did the antediluvians do to get 2,000 years almost. And what hygienic matters did they miss when they came out of the ark and then followed their life so that their life was cut short? Because you see, the sons of Noah, they just live about 500 years. The half of their father's life. And now the following goes down. After a few generations, God makes a step and a cut. And then from 400 years, now they live only 200. And then they come down, and then he comes suddenly to 120. So it goes over generations. But it goes in the wrong direction. That medicine tells us. Our medicine says, no, because of our good hygienic measures, because of our good pharmaceutical things, that's why we are longevic, more than others. And we compare maybe with the time when people died earlier and believe that that is the truth. No, friends. The people that are born today, if the world would last, would not even get 50 years old. Not even 50 years. Because they are so rotten, they're so gone, so destroyed. It's just the old people that get old. Not the young. They die. The most people die today in the world between 50 and 70 years old, even younger than 50. Only the old generations, they go for 100 years. And it is not even mattering their lifestyle. Because health, yes, we have a part in it. And longevity, I don't know here if we have a part in it, but it's all the grace of God. We are living under the grace of God. And we should be happy with that. God may help us to see that the Word of God tells us the truth, not medicine. We are going in decreasing longevity, not increasing longevity. But the lie must be very nice to tell you, look, this is the achievement of medicine. It is not. It is to make us a name, like the people with Nimrod. They wanted to make themselves a name against God, that they decide upon their longevity. That's not possible. We are God's creation, and He decides, and it's in His hands, our life and our health. Our part we do, but we cannot control that what God only controls. And that is life itself. So as we approach the last events of this earth, and as we are going to study deeper this comparison between Genesis and what happens in the first book of the Bible, we might search our hearts, very diligent, and see on what faith we stand. Because our belief will determine our destiny. If we believe the truth, we will be safe. But if we believe the lie, we will come into self-destruction. And finally, if someone would take the mark of the beast, he would fall under the plagues that come upon Babylon, upon the abominations that are done there. And I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be a child of God. And I want to believe that, no matter what signs would show, to stick on the faith that I am His and He is mine. and so continue to prepare for the last events to take place and be a witness for Him as He will call us if we are faithful. I want to be faithful. I hope you as well. Amen.